The clock struck 7 a.m. in the sleek, glass-walled office of Horizon Enterprises. Nestled in the heart of Chicago's Loop, Abigail Harper, 34, sat at her desk, a steaming coffee in one hand, her eyes scanning the quarterly reports for their biggest client, a pharmaceutical giant that had single-handedly pulled the company from the brink of collapse last year. The morning was crisp, the city's skyline glinting through the window. And for a moment, everything felt under control, that is, until the door slammed open with a force that rattled the framed awards on her wall. Enter Jacob Sullivan, 21, son of CEO William Sullivan, heir to a corporate empire he'd never earned a dime for. His tailored suit hung awkwardly on his lean frame, his face twisted with the kind of rage only a pampered kid could muster when someone dared defy him. "You think you can just ignore me?" he barked, slamming his fist on Abigail's desk, sending a pen skittering to the floor. "When I give an order, you obey it." Abigail didn't flinch. Her voice was ice cold. "Professional, Jacob. I don't take orders from interns." His face flushed crimson. "I'm the future CEO. You'll pay for this." Abigail raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I'll deal with you when you're actually CEO. Until then." She gestured toward the door. "Get out of my office." She knew dismissing him like that would have consequences. What she didn't expect was how fast they'd come, by that very evening. Let's rewind a few months. It was late fall when William Sullivan, Horizon's CEO, announced that his son Jacob would join the company for experience. Most of the staff, Abigail included, assumed he'd shadow a few departments, get bored, and jet off to some luxury penthouse in Miami. They were wrong. Jacob was handed the title of Junior Operations Director, a role Abigail had clawed her way to after 6 years of late nights, high-stakes deals, and relentless dedication. Jacob? He had no qualifications, no grasp of the company's operations. Yet in his mind, that title made him Abigail's boss. At first, Abigail played along. She quietly fixed his botched proposals, corrected his amateur mistakes, and even covered for him when he missed critical deadlines. Why? Because she loved her job. Because she believed in Horizon's mission. And maybe, just maybe, because she hoped Jacob would grow into the role. She was wrong about that, too. The breaking point came 2 weeks earlier. Jacob stormed into her office, tossed a manila folder onto her desk, and demanded, "Fire the Larson team. They pissed me off." The Larson team, Abigail's team, had just secured a $4.2 million contract, a lifeline for the company's expansion into European markets. Abigail kept her voice steady. "I'm not firing anyone because they annoyed you." Jacob sneered. "I'll tell my father you disobeyed a direct order." Abigail met his gaze, unflinching. "Go right ahead." He stormed out, leaving a trail of arrogance in his wake. Abigail thought William would rein his son in. She thought reason would prevail. But she underestimated the power of entitlement and family loyalty. Jacob didn't just want control, he wanted absolute submission. And when he didn't get it, he decided to make her pay. The night of Horizon's annual spring gala was a spectacle, held at a glittering venue overlooking Lake Michigan. The event was a showcase of the company's success. Abigail, representing the international division she'd built from the ground up, mingled with investors and clients, her confidence radiating. For a fleeting moment, she believed her hard work was finally being recognized. Then her phone buzzed. A single text from William Sullivan. "Abigail. My office. First thing tomorrow." Her stomach churned. Sleep eluded her that night. She knew what was coming. Jacob had made his move. And William, instead of disciplining his son, had chosen the path of least resistance, sacrificing Abigail. At 7:30 a.m., she stood before William's mahogany desk, the Chicago skyline looming behind him. He avoided her eyes. "Abigail, I'm afraid I have to." But before he could finish, she leaned forward, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Check your inbox first." William's face drained of color as he opened his laptop. There, in a folder Abigail had sent the previous night, were 47 emails from Jacob. Some were absurd, others were damning. Emails demanding falsified supply chain reports, Emails instructing the finance team to tweak numbers to inflate his performance metrics. Emails sent directly to Abigail with threats like, "Do what I say, or I'll make sure you're done." She stood silently as William scrolled, his hands trembling slightly. Finally, he leaned back, exhaling heavily. "I had no idea." Abigail crossed her arms. "Didn't you?" William flinched. He'd known, at least enough to suspect. But it's easier to ignore when it's your own son crossing lines. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. His voice strained. Abigail's response was measured. "Because I thought this company valued merit. Because I didn't want to be the one to tear your family apart." She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "I'm here because your son threatened to ruin my career for refusing to fire a team that just saved you $4.2 million. I'm here because I won't let a 21-year-old brat treat people like trash while you turn a blind eye." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner. William's voice was barely audible. "What do you want?" Abigail's lips curved into a faint smile. "I want my career. I want the Larson team protected. I want this nonsense to stop before it destroys your company." She walked out, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with resolve. Jacob might think he held all the cards, but Abigail was playing a game he couldn't even comprehend. The Chicago skyline shimmered under the midday sun, but inside the boardroom of Horizon Enterprises, the air was thick with tension. Abigail Harper stood outside, her pulse steady but her mind racing. She'd spent months preparing for this moment, though she hadn't known it would come so soon. Inside, the board of directors was in a closed-door session, dissecting a report that would change everything. It wasn't just about her. It was about the future of the company she'd poured her soul into for 6 years. And it all traced back to Jacob Sullivan, the 21-year-old heir who thought he could bully his way to power. The storm broke at 9:17 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday. When a company-wide email landed with a cold thud, Abigail Harper. Administrative leave, pending internal review. No explanation. No context, just a sterile announcement that, to the uninformed, looked like Abigail was the one who'd crossed a line. But the truth was far messier. Jacob Sullivan, the CEO's son, had spent months undermining her, his ego bruised by her refusal to bow to his reckless demands. His latest stunt, demanding the firing of the Larson team, who'd secured a $4.2 million contract, had pushed Abigail to her limit. She'd fought back, not with tantrums, but with cold, hard evidence. By 10:05 a.m., the board received a joint report from two of Horizon's most trusted figures, Saren Nguyen, head of compliance, and Michael Torres, senior legal counsel. The report was a surgical strike, 47 pages of meticulously documented proof of Jacob's misconduct. Emails where he demanded falsified supply chain data to cover his incompetence. Messages instructing the finance team to manipulate numbers to inflate his performance. Direct threats to Abigail, like one chilling line, "Cross me, and I'll make sure you're out on the street." The report didn't accuse, it simply laid bare the facts, ending with a stark recommendation: immediate review of leadership accountability and potential breaches of fiduciary duty. At the same time, a letter from Horizon's largest client, Global Tech Solutions, hit the board's inboxes. Abigail had built that relationship from scratch, earning the trust of Global Tech's VP, Rachel Kim, over years of flawless execution. Jacob, in a disastrous meeting he'd insisted on leading solo, had nearly tanked the partnership with his arrogance. Rachel's letter was polite but brutal. Global Tech values stability and competence in its partners. Any leadership changes that compromise this will force us to reconsider our contracts. The subtext was clear: Jacob was a liability. And if Horizon didn't act, Global Tech would walk, taking their $10 million annual deal with them. Inside the boardroom, chaos erupted. Sarah texted Abigail from the sidelines. "William looks like he's aged a decade. Jacob's trying to pin it on you. It's not working." The board wasn't buying Jacob's excuses. They saw the emails, the timestamps, the undeniable pattern of recklessness. By 11:30 a.m., the room was locked down. The directors' faces grim. Jacob's threats to go to the board, If his father didn't fire Abigail had backfired spectacularly. The board wasn't just reviewing Abigail's suspension, they were questioning William Sullivan's leadership for letting his son run amok. Abigail wasn't idle during this storm. Months earlier, she'd seen the warning signs. Clients had grown jittery, senior managers asked odd questions, and key partnerships she'd nurtured were suddenly reassigned to Jacob. It didn't take a genius to see he was gunning for her international division, the crown jewel of Horizon. So Abigail had done what she did best, she prepared. She'd documented every misstep Jacob made. Every email, every reckless directive. She'd saved voicemails, meeting notes, even client complaints about Jacob's behavior. But she didn't stop there. She'd confided in Sarah Nguyen and Michael Torres, her allies in compliance and legal, over late-night coffees in a dimly lit diner on Michigan Avenue. She laid out her evidence. Sarah shook her head at first. "Abigail, this is a career ender, for you or him." Michael nodded. "If this goes to the board, it's war." Abigail leaned forward, her voice steady. "It's not about me. It's about the company. They need to know." After a long pause, Sarah said, "I'm in." Michael followed. "Me too." Together, they built a fortress of evidence. Sarah uncovered a near-catastrophic violation of international trade regulations tied to one of Jacob's special projects. Had Abigail not intervened quietly 2 months earlier, the company could have faced fines in the millions. Michael drafted memos outlining how Jacob's actions breached fiduciary duty, potentially exposing Horizon to lawsuits. They cross-referenced contracts, tracked compliance lapses, and built a case so airtight it could withstand any scrutiny. Abigail didn't just want to protect herself, she wanted to save the company from Jacob's chaos. By 2 p.m., William Sullivan called Abigail. She let it go to voicemail. Twice. On the third call, she picked up. "Abigail, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. She let the silence hang, making him sweat. "About my suspension?" she asked coolly. William exhaled. "About everything." They met in his office that afternoon. For once, Jacob wasn't lurking in the background, smirking like he owned the place. William looked hollow, his usual CEO swagger gone. "The board wants to meet with you tomorrow," he said quietly. "They've asked for Jacob's immediate resignation, and for me to step down temporarily, pending review." Abigail didn't blink. "Sounds appropriate." William gave a bitter smile. "You really did it. You took him down." Abigail's gaze was steady. "I didn't take anyone down. Jacob did that himself. I just refused to cover for him." For a moment, William looked like he might argue. But then he slumped forward. Defeated. "You were the best we had," he whispered. "I should have backed you." Abigail said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, Abigail walked into the boardroom, a place she'd never been invited to before. 12 directors sat around a polished oak table, their expressions a mix of curiosity and respect. She expected a grilling, but instead, the chairman, a silver-haired woman named Eleanor Brooks, leaned forward. "Abigail, we'd like your perspective." She delivered it with the precision of a surgeon. She spoke of the deals she'd negotiated, the partnerships she'd protected, the risks she'd mitigated when Jacob's recklessness threatened to derail them. She didn't raise her voice or point fingers, she let the facts speak. Heads nodded around the table. When she finished, Eleanor's voice was firm but warm. "Abigail, we'd like you to consider stepping into an interim leadership role for the international division while we restructure." Abigail's heart skipped, but she kept her composure. "I'd be honored," she said, her mind already racing with plans. This wasn't just a reinstatement, it was a promotion. But she stayed guarded. Titles could vanish as quickly as they appeared. Respect, though, that was something Jacob would never regain. 2 weeks later, Jacob Sullivan was gone. No farewell email, no grand exit, just a quiet banishment to manage family investments in London. A move designed to avoid a public scandal. William Sullivan stepped down, voluntarily, citing personal reasons in a carefully worded memo that thanked him for his service. Corporate speak for leave quietly. "And we won't air your dirty laundry." On Abigail's first day as interim director of international operations, she passed Jacob's old corner office. His nameplate lay discarded on the desk. A relic of his brief, chaotic reign. She didn't gloat. This wasn't about victory. It was about protecting the people who'd suffered under Jacob's shadow. She called her team together, the Larson group included, and made one promise. I don't care about titles or last names. I care about work, integrity, and respect. That's how we move forward. The relief on their faces was palpable. A month later, Global Tech Solutions renewed their contract, not because Horizon begged, but because Rachel Kim called Abigail personally. We work with leaders who know what they're doing, she said. That's you. Other clients followed. Deals closed, and stability returned. Horizon didn't just recover, it thrived. The final twist came at a private dinner with the board. Abigail arrived expecting a formal review. But the atmosphere was different. The directors weren't treating her as a placeholder anymore. Eleanor Brooks spoke first. Abigail, we'd like to offer you the permanent role of Vice President of International Operations. Effective immediately. Abigail paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in. I have conditions, she said. Eleanor smiled. Let's hear them. Abigail laid them out. Zero tolerance for nepotism in leadership. Transparent accountability for all executives. And full authority to protect and build her team. Eleanor nodded after each one. Agreed. She signed the contract a week later, not for the title or the raise, but to ensure no one else would have to fight the battles she did just to be treated with dignity. Word of Jacob reached her months later. He was burning through his trust fund in London, trying to impress investors who saw through his bluster. Abigail didn't care. He was a footnote now. Jacob had tried to destroy her because she wouldn't bow. William had tried to sacrifice her to save face. But neither understood the truth about power. It doesn't come from titles or threats. It comes from competence, character, and the trust of those who choose to follow you. Abigail Harper didn't just survive. She reshaped Horizon in her image, proving that real power is earned, not inherited.